Hey Thinksters, in this video I want to go on talking about generators, and we will go a bit more into depth now, and we will also see how to create an infinite sequence with a generator. So here I created a function and it's not infinite. It will stop after the generator which the function returns will stop after it returned the 3 values from this list. And as it was a bit unclear in the last video, I put the print statement here again, and now it's directly there. You will see it when I run the code. We return, here we yield the first element, which is the 1, and we print it immediately. Then in the next call, the execution continues here from the print statement. So we get the line here, we increment I, we yield the next element. And in the next call, we continue from this print statement again. So that's why we get 2 lines here now, just in between the elements which we printed. So now after this one iteration over the list, the generator is done. What happens if we call next on the generator again? We get a stop iteration exception, an error. And that's how generators always stop. When they are done, you get this exception. Actually, you don't see it when you use a for loop. If we do for x in gen, and that's actually also how you use a generator. Now we print x. Now it will not run into this error because internally Python knows how to handle this stop iteration. It's just defined that this is the way how the iteration over a generator stops. So there's no return or something. It ends with an exception, but you don't see this exception when you use a for loop. Okay, so I promised that we would look at infinite sequences, and that's what we will do now. I will call our loop variable num, and I mean the variable that we increment in the loop. Now we have a while true loop, so an infinite loop to start, and we yield num, and then we increment num by 1. Then here we call infinite. We could also put it directly here. That's also possible. But remember that it will return the generator. So what happens if we run this now? Surprisingly, we get an infinite sequence. It never stops because we have a while true loop here. And the for loop goes over this generator as long as it doesn't get the stop iteration error. So here, this will never stop because in contrary to the list, which had a finite number of elements, here we have an infinite loop inside. So we generate an infinite sequence and it will never stop. We never get the stop iteration error. Yeah, I think that's very interesting that you can use generators to create infinite sequences, and you couldn't do it with a list, because with a list, how would you do it? I mean, you create your list and you can't write an infinite number of elements here. Of course, you could do something like range and then infinite, but then you have to use special libraries, and I don't know really whether it works. If you do float inf, it will also throw an error. That was not so clever because we have the infinite sequence before. So don't call this. Just restart the kernel. So here you see we get an error because we need an integer, and you could do it with a special module that you import, then you have an infinite integer value also. But yeah, I don't know whether it works. And it would fill your memory if you create a, maybe not infinite list, but a huge list like this. This will completely block your memory. So that's why we use generators. They are really cool, and they make it possible to create infinite sequences. If you have any questions, leave a comment, leave a thumb up, and see you next time.